Hello my friends and welcome back to In the Shadow of Yggdrasil podcast. In the previous episode, we witnessed the birth of the universe. We saw how, from the yawning void and the violent clash of fire and ice, Ymir was born, and how three gods, three brothers, Odin, Vili and Ve, decided to kill him and build our world from his corpse. Three brothers then, three creators who stood before the primordial giant and brought him down. And yet, from this point on, the stories will speak almost exclusively of one of them. Vili and Ve disappear from the narratives as though they had never existed. Some sources mention them under other names, Hönir and Lodur, while others forget them entirely. Why does this happen? Because Odin, the third brother, covered them with his shadow, absorbed them into the story and became the sole All-Father, the architect of the universe, leaving his fellow creators in the silence of oblivion. This is his first contradiction, a god who created the world together with others, then claimed all the glory for himself. Today we will focus on the mind behind the creation, the king of Asgard who is also the leader of its destruction. Forget the image of a kindly king with a white beard sitting peacefully on his throne. Forget the almighty, eternal, unchanging God of Christianity, who rules a world without beginning and without end, or even Zeus from the Greek mythology, standing above Olympus and fearing nothing. The God we will speak of today knows that he will die. He knows when, he knows how, and that knowledge of the end devours him with every passing day. He is perhaps the most complex, darkest, and most restlessly troubled figure in all mythology. The All-Father, Odin. Odin is a god of contradictions like no other. War and poetry both belong to him, and so do magic and betrayal. He is the patron of kings, and he spends most of his time dressed as a beggar on the roads of the mortal world. The broad-brimmed hat he wears throws a shadow across his empty eye. He leans on a wanderer's staff and asks for a night's shelter in the halls of kings and the houses of farmers alike. He sets them riddles and tells them stories, testing how kind they are and how far their wits will stretch. Fail the test and his punishment is dreadful. He carries more names than anyone can count, a new one for every disguise. In the land of the dead he goes as Vegdam. When he wants to needle a man and test him, he is Harbard. And when his goal demands that he labor like a slave, he takes the name Bolverk. Every name uncovers another face of him, and every shape he wears carries him nearer to whatever he's hunting. Other stories put him at the feast table, daring the company to a contest of wits. In the Vafthrûdnir Mall he walks into a giant's hall and sits down to the deadliest game of all, question against question, and the one who runs out of answers dies. The Grimnis Mall shows him from the other side, bound and tortured by a king who never saw through the disguise. The moment Odin lets the mask drop, the king throws himself onto his own sword in sheer terror. This is not a god who waits in the sky for prayers and offerings. He comes down, he walks among them, and more often than you would think, he turns on the ones who trusted him. Above all of it, though, Odin is a hunter of knowledge. The thing he chases without rest, The thing he thirsts after more than anything is wisdom, and there is no price he will not pay for it, however terrible. His first great sacrifice took him down to one of the 3 roots of Yggdrasil, where Mimir's well lay hidden under the earth. Mimir was older than almost anything, older perhaps than the gods themselves. He was memory and wisdom given a shape, and the water of his well held everything that had ever been known and everything still to come. Odin was already the strongest of the gods, and he still came to that well because he had grasped what so many rulers never do. Power without knowledge behind it is a blind and dangerous thing. And now let us descend in, though to Mimir's well, beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, and listen to how his dialogue with Odin might have sounded in the ancient language of the Norse sagas.
Mimir, gef mér ein drykk og eigi meir. Ein drykk úr brunninum, sådana frjálsum vilja, eigi stólin. Af frjálsum vilja, já. En ekki fæst neitt af þessu vatni gefins alföður. Það veistu. Ella hefðir þú eigi gengið svá langt niður, nestaðið svá kyrr, fyrir gömlu höfði í lind. Kem sem konungur kemur, eigi sem þjófur. Ek hef gengið vegu brjóta minni menn, og lengra vil ek enn ganga. Gef mér drykkinn. Konunga hef ek sett. Þeir komu þyrstir og fóru léttari en þeir komu. Brunnurinn tekur mál sitt af hverjum hálsi drekkir. Hann mun taka af þínum. Nefn þá málið. Ek steig eigi niður í myrkur þitt til kaupslags, sem kaupmaður á markaði. Engin kaupslög. Vatnið setur sjálft verð sitt, og það hefur þegar letið á þig og valið gjald sitt. Legg það þá fram. Legg fram þá þú komst búinn að láta af hendi. Og drekk.
Odin did not hesitate. No gold, no power. He looked the guardian of the well full in the face, took out his own eye, and dropped it in the water. The pain was terrible. The price was paid. Mimir filled his horn and held it out to the one-eyed god. Odin drank, and the whole of it opened before him. The past, the roots of the worlds, the future, and at the end of it all, Ragnarök. He watched himself swallowed by the wolf Fenrir he watched his son Thor go down, poisoned by the serpent of Midgard. Asgard in flames, the gods falling one after another, all of it laid out in front of him. From that day on, Odin carried the knowledge of the cosmos inside him, and that same knowledge became his curse. He now knew the end was real, knew it crept nearer with every sunrise, and he gave the rest of his existence over to one desperate, half-mad purpose, to push that end back, or somehow to break it. His eyes stayed behind in the well, staring into the threads of fate, a reminder forever of what wisdom had cost him. Knowing was never going to be enough for Odin. He did not want only to understand the world, he wanted his hands on the levers of it, to bend reality where it was rooted. That meant the runes, the magic woven through the fabric of everything. These were no ordinary letters for the spelling out words. They were signs that carried a frightening power, able to heal a man or kill him, to bind an enemy fast or call the dead up out of the ground, even to turn the course of fate. And that power was locked away, reachable only through a trial so brutal that few would ever find the courage or the madness to attempt it. This time he would not give up a piece of himself. This time he would give up all of it. In one of the oldest and grimmest of the poems, the Havamal, the sayings of the High One, Odin tells the story in his own voice. I know that I hung on a wind-battered tree, hung there for 9 whole nights, wounded with a spear given to Odin, myself to myself. On that tree of which no man knows from what roots it rises, they gave me no bread, no horn of drink. I looked down into the depths, I took up the runes. Screaming, I took them. Then I fell back down. Picture it, the king of the gods strung up on Yggdrasil itself, the world tree, for 9 days and 9 nights. No food, no water. His own spear Gugnir driven through him, hanging there in the narrow space between living and dying. He prayed to nobody, because nobody stood above him to pray to. He called on no brother and no god for help. This was himself, offered up to himself. An act of pure will, and it shows you the lengths he would go to for power. Then at the very end, with the dark closing over him and his life worn down to a thread, his eyes snapped open and the shapes of the runes rose up at him out of the chaos below. He let out a cry that rang through every word, threw out his hand and took them. The magic he had come for was his own. That was not the only magic he went after. There was another kind, darker and more troubling, called Seidr, and it belonged for the most part to women and to seeresses. With it you could look into the future and pull the strings of fate. You could reach into minds and hearts and turn them. For a man to practice it was held shameful, and for a king more shameful still. None of it stopped Odin. He went straight to Freya, the great mistress of Seidr, and asked her to teach him what she knew. She agreed. So Odin took up this women's magic and let the other gods sneer at him for it, because beside the power it gave him, a little shame weighed almost nothing. This is the Odin you have to understand. He suffered because he chose to. He cut into his own body, walked through death's gate and came back, swallowed every insult, all so that he could know everything and command everything. What drove him was never vanity. It was despair. And when neither knowledge nor magic was enough, Odin reached for other methods without a second thought. One story in particular shows how cunning he could be and how nakedly he wanted power. It is the story of the mead of poetry, the Odrerir. This was no ordinary drink. It had been brewed from the blood of the wisest creature that ever lived, Kvasir, and a single draught of it gave a man the gift of poetry and of golden speech. The mead, though, was far away inside a mountain, with a giant Sutung and his daughter Gunnlod set to guard it. He changed his shape, called himself Bolverk, and hired on with Sutung's brother, breaking his back in the fields all season for a single wage, one taste of the mead. When the giant turned back on the agreement, Odin became a snake, poured himself through a crack in the rock, and wound down through the heart of the mountain to the chamber when Gunnlod kept watch over the drink. There he stood up a man again. He charmed the giant's daughter, stayed 3 nights at her side, and coaxed her into granting him 3 ships, one from each of the 3 vessels. 3 ships were all he needed. He drained every vessel dry, turned into an eagle, and beat his wings toward Asgard, with Sutung tearing after him as an eagle of his own. When he reached the halls of Asgard, he spat the whole of the mead into the jars the gods had ready, and from then on the mead of poetry belonged to them. The story leaves you in no doubt about him. He is a thief and a trickster and a seducer, and he will do whatever the moment calls for to get what he's after. Gunnlod was hardly the only one. Beyond Frigg, his lawful wife who sits at his side on Asgard, Odin kept many lovers. He fathered children on giantesses and mortal women and other goddesses alike, Thor by the earth, Silent Vidar by greed, and Vali by rind. And there was nearly always a reason behind the affair, a plan folded inside it, some moving his longer game to keep the gods alive when Ragnarök came. There are other moments, though, when the schemer and the cold strategist fall away, and what is left is a frightened father trying to save the one he loves. When his son Balder the Beautiful started dreaming of his own death, Odin understood at once that something dreadful was on the way. No god was more loved than Balder, none brighter or gentler, and those dreams of his spread fear all through Asgard. So Odin mounted Sleipnir and rode all the way down to Hel, into the country of the dead, the journey the Baldr's Draumar describes. At the gates of the underworld he woke a long-dead seeress with his spells, and made her tell him what was coming. The truth she gave him was the worst he could hear. Balder would die, and down in Hell they were already making the place ready for him. He carried that knowledge back to Asgard. He did everything he could to turn fate aside, and Frigg went so far as to take an oath from every single thing in the world that it would never harm her son. Yet Loki still found the gap in it. Balder died. Odin could not save him. Here was the proof, one more time, that seeing the future is not the same as having the power to change it. And still, he did not stop trying. When Fenrir grew into a threat, the monstrous wolf that Loki had sired, the prophecies had already told Odin that this was the beast who would swallow him at Ragnarök. The wolf had to be chained, and so the gods laid a trap. They dared Fenrir to prove his strength by snapping a fetter, and the wolf went along with it, taking the whole thing for a game. But the fetter was Gleipnir, and the dwarves had forged it out of things that have no substance at all. The footfall of a cat, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spit of a bird. A chain like that could never be broken. Fenrir smelled the trick though, and would only let himself be bound on one condition, that one of the gods lay a hand inside his jaws as a token of good faith. Tyr, god of war and god of honor, put his hand in the wolf's mouth. When Fenrir felt the chain hold and knew he could not tear free, he bit down and took Tyr's hand clean off. Bound he was, and bound he stays until Ragnarök. But Odin knows how it ends. On that day the chain snaps and the beast comes loose to hunt him down. Maybe the greatest moment in his whole story, the one that earns him the name All-Father, is the making of humankind. Once the world had been shaped out of Ymir's body, the gods were walking the seashore when they came on 2 pieces of driftwood thrown up by the waves, an ass and a poplar. Odin and his brothers, whom the tradition here calls Hönir and Lodur, chose to give them life. From Odin came breath, and the living spirit. From Hönir came mind, odr, thought and awareness. Lodur gave them blood and the warm color of a living face. There they stood, Ask and Embla, the first man and the first woman, the root of every human being since. Here is a different Odin altogether, the maker, the giver of life, his hands building rather than scheming for once. With all that knowledge and all that magic in hand, he rules Asgard. His throne is called Hlindskjalf, and from it he can look out over the 9 worlds at a single glance. He seldom sits there for long though. Mostly he sets out his spies. 2 ravens ride his shoulders, Hugin, who is thought, and Mnunin, who is memory. Each morning he casts them loose across the worlds, and each evening they settle back onto his shoulders and murmur into his ear all they have seen and heard, every secret and every plot, every step his enemies take. And he lives in a low, constant dread of losing them one day, memory above all, because a god who has lost his memory is blind behind him and helpless to see what lies ahead. 2 wolves lie at his feet, Freki and Geri, and at the feast in Valhalla, Odin himself never touches the food. He gives all of it to the wolves and takes only wine and mead for himself. He has no need of eating anymore. His knowledge sustains him. When he rides to war or sets out on the road, he goes on Sleipnir, that uncanny 8-legged horse, the swiftest in all realms. Sleipnir can run across open air and across the sea, through the lands of the living and the lands of the dead. How Sleipnir came to be is its own strange tale, one with Loki tangled up in it, and we will come to it before long. As a god of war, Odin is the great strategist, the lord of battle fury, of that berserker madness whose warriors threw themselves in without armor and without any fear of dying, and of a battle cunning that can look a great deal like treachery. He can hand victory to anyone he chooses, and he can take it back at the last moment if that serves his designs. He sends the Valkyries, the warrior maidens, down to the battlefields of Midgard. They do not come to fight. They come to choose half of the fallen, the bravest, and the most worthy, and carry them up to his hall, Valhalla. There the dead warriors, the Iron Harrier, live in a strange afterlife. All day they fight and cut one another down, and by evening they rise whole again and drink through the night at feasts that never end. And why does he keep them? He has seen Ragnarök and he is building an army. These dead men will stand at his side in the last battle. The strength he hopes will be enough to overturn the end he read in Mimir's well. It is a desperate gathering, and it shows how little true power he holds. His knowledge has no limits, and still he cannot bend fate. He can only keep trying. This is the Odin to remember, the one-eyed, the father of the spear, the wanderer, the hanged god, the thief of the mead, the waker of the dead. He hunts knowledge out of need and out of fear of the fate he has already seen, and he wears himself thin, holding together a world he knows is bound to fall. The same hand that drives the gods toward their ruin spends everything it has to pull them back, and from that knot there is no escape. Odin's shadow stretches across centuries of later writing, and you will know him the moment you open Tolkien. Gandalf the Grey, the wandering wizard, with a broad-brimmed hat and the staff who walks through Middle-earth, comes straight from Odin on his roads among mortals. Tolkien, who was a professor of Old English, had studied the myths in depth, took up the same old wizard who arrives without warning, weighs the people he meets, steers their fates, and stands against a darkness that looks certain to win, never once showing anyone the whole of what he knows or plans. The very name Gandalf, Wand Elf in Old Norse, sits in the Voluspa, among a list of dwarves and wizards. So, Odin keeps to his spells and to the dead, scheming without rest to hold off the end, while he rules over kings and poets. There is another god who cares nothing for any of that. Spells have no hold on him, and poems waste his time. His element is raw strength and the storm, and the people he guards are the ordinary folk, the farmers, who have no use for a riddle-setting wizard on a throne. What they want is a guardian the size of a giant, a hammer in his fist, ready to stand between them and whatever comes their way. The next episode we meet Odin's son, the most popular and loudest god of Asgard. Brace yourselves for Thor.